Okay, so here we have our download file that you can get off the link below this YouTube video. And you'll notice inside it has a bunch of After Effects files, all different resolutions. You have everything from 720p to 5K, and this is just kind of a quick way to jump right into Element or a project file just to start a new one without going through all the, basic things, basic setups you have to do when launching a new project. So you have all the most popular HD formats here, and you'll see right here that we have everything already set up. Now each of these files are 30 seconds long and at 24 frames per second. So that's the only thing you'll really need to change when you get in, because it's always, specific to how long you want your clip or what clip you're using and at what frame rate. So you'll see it opens up and we already have a comp, we already have a timeline, we have a solid with element on it, a camera on it, and you'll notice two extra things here, a grid plane and a kind of a background with kind of a gradient on it for, what's my opinion, for better navigation when you're working in 3D and After Effects. Now, a good way to go about this, just to keep organized, because the whole idea behind this is a time saver. It's just a time saving technique. So what you want to do, or what I do, is I have these files pinned to my After Effects shortcut on my taskbar. And I'm sure if you're on a Mac, there's an equivalent to this. I know like they use Stacks or whatever that is, but it's just a good way to be able to point, click, and be ready to go. The first thing you're going to want to do is save it under another name so you don't overwrite your base file. Otherwise, it'll just replace them and you'll be left with whatever you end up doing from here on out. So you always want to keep these base files intact. So the first thing you'd want to do is save it as a new file. You'll notice if you're an Element user, you use the 3D interface and it's really great. It's fast, it's fluid, you got the grid, so you're always kind of knowing where you're at in 3D space. But then when you come back to After Effects, it's different. It's just black and it's kind of a void, and it's easy to get turned around without a grid. So here is a grid, and each project file at each resolution is all set up the same way with this. Or if you don't want to use this for Element, you just want to use it to launch a comp at these resolutions, just do it and delete these layers. I'm not sure if you noticed, but when I open the project file, I selected the 5K one, and you might be saying to yourself, why open 5K? Why not do 1920 or Ultra HD? Because 5K is not really a standard in any way. So I want to explain what the significance is of that project file and why I use it. Let's say, for instance, you want to comp and do some 3D effects, and you open the HD one, the full HD, the 1920 by 1080. Now, you're going to find that even though Element uses your GPU and it's super fast, it's rendering everything in real time. So even when you're at 1920 by 1080 and you have, a high-end computer, 6 gigabyte GPU, you're still going to end up taking a hit when you start using stuff like ambient occlusion, especially if you up the samples and you want to use ray tracing and all that. So you're going to find a lot of the time you're going to be working at half res, maybe even a third or a quarter depending on the specs of your machine. But the problem with that is when you do that at 1920 by 1080, say you have to go to half res, then you're automatically working at a resolution that's well below HD. So you're going to have a muddled looking comp, and you're going to have, rough edges and blurry textures, and it's just, you want to work in the best quality possible for as long as possible until your scene just gets so complex that you have to downgrade it a little bit. So why I select the 5K project is when you're working at a quarter resolution, the adaptive resolution feature, if you're working at a quarter res, their software becomes even faster, more responsive. When you're working in a 5K project file, for example, then you can work at a quarter resolution and still be comping in HD, because the 5K resolution that the project is set up in, when you divide it by 4, you end up with 1280 by 720. Now compare this to if you're working in a 1920 by 1080 comp and you just use the adaptive resolution to go to half res, you're already below 1K, which is well below HD. And I just like to be able to see as much detail when I'm working in Element as possible. But there's also other reasons to do this, especially now when we're right on the cusp of 4K and it's becoming closer and closer to becoming the standard. You want to maybe have your projects future-proof, or maybe you're already wanting to deliver your work in 4K. So when you comp in 1920 by 1080, then you're locked into that when you're rendering out. If you work at 5K at quarter res at 1280, then you can always set it to full render or 4K render or even 2K if you're just delivering in 2K when it comes time to render. So you'll have a native render, no scaling, at really high resolutions. So that's another advantage to doing it this way. And real quick, I know I've been talking for a while here, but there's a folder in here called Aspect Mats, and I added this with the free download from the link below. These are just mats because if you're working in Element and you want to see a different aspect ratio, or you have to deliver in a different aspect ratio, you're going in, changing the size of your comp is going to create a lot of problems because Element uses the size of the solid to work at that resolution. With these, you can just take them and drop them on and see your comps. You know, widescreen, there's 4 different kinds here. There's 185:1, there's 220:1, and the 2 most commonly used, 235 and 240:1. So you can use these to, check out different framing without having to change your comp size and all that stuff. Thank you guys for listening. This is my first one of these, so, constructive criticism is welcome. Don't be too brutal, though. And comment below if this is something that helped you. And, try this out. You'll see, it's hard to tell on a compressed YouTube video, so see how working at the 1280 adaptive resolution is much faster and more fluid than even working in a 1280 by 720 full project. It's even more responsive than that. So check that out. Let me know what you think, and thanks for watching.